حي على الفلاح.
The territory of modern-day Uzbekistan and its close neighbors have seen many empires rise and fall. The Sogdians, the Macedonians, the Huns, the Mongolians, the Seljuks, the Timurids, and the Khanates of Samarkand, Bukhara, Khiva, and Khorizm all held sway at one time or another. The spread of Islam was impressive during the 7th and 8th century. Central Asia was a key area for the Arab Caliphate to expand into, and the Silk Road made it easy for them. Merchants traveled along the Silk Road, advocating the new religion, and many people took to Islam very quickly along the route. This also resulted in many Muslim strongholds popping up throughout the region. The Umayyads were the first ones to expand into what is Uzbekistan today. It may be overlooked that some of the greatest men who have left legacies with their priceless deeds actually were born in Uzbekistan. Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Tirmidhi, Ibn Sina, and Ulugh Beg are just to name a few. The territory became a world-leading center of science, medicine, philosophy, and culture during the golden age of Islam. Cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Khiva were renowned for being centers of learning and innovation. One of the iconic landmarks in Uzbekistan is the Registan Square in Samarkand. It's adorned with 3 stunning madrasas, reflecting the brilliance of Islamic architecture during the golden period. As far back as in the pre-Islamic period, Zoroastrianism, the world-spread religious system, was born on the territory of the present-day Uzbekistan and Khorizm, and became common property of all mankind. There was formed the highest technological culture of those times: town planning, irrigation systems, armory, silk weaving, cultivation of grain, cotton, grapes, and fruits. In those times, local technologies and master craftsmen were highly valued and appreciated. The synthetic character is rather typical for this particular civilization. Combination of achievements gained by the Sogdians, people of Khorizm, Turks, India, China, Iran, Middle East, and by Hellenism. In the late 7th century, an altogether new and formidable kind of power was waiting: the army of Islam, exploding out of Arabia just a few years after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's death. The Muslim armies rolled through Persia in 642 to set up a military base at Merv, but met stiff resistance from Transoxiana. The Arabs brought Islam to Central Asia. Arab invasion was the first from the west for a millennium and brought an end to diversity of religions in the region, with followers of Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Nestorian Christianity, Judaism, and Manichaeism in one place and time. To the Arabs, conquerors of the Sassanids, this territory was Mawaran Nahar, the land beyond the river Oxus, Amudarya, and they determined to cross it with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's bold new creed. Eastern expeditions began in 649, but full annexation awaited the energetic campaigns of Qutayba ibn Muslim, governor of Khorasan, the eastern province of Persia. Between 706 and 713, he took Bukhara, Samarkand, Khorizm, and Tashkent. On campaign and Fargana in 715, Qutayba's rebellion against the new Umayyad Caliph in Damascus, a personal enemy, brought assassination by his own troops. His death and the weakened state of the Caliphate ensured a stormy century of Sogdian and Turkic revolt against the new religion and its overlords. Though Uzbekistan's culture did continue to be influenced by its Persian past, the Arab conquest made its presence felt too. Islam replaced Zoroastrianism and other faiths. Arabic became the primary language for government, literature, and commerce. The relationship was not one way. However, as the Abbasid Caliphate, which would rule the Arab world for 5 centuries, defeated the ruling Umayyads in part due to Central Asian support, the new Abbasid Caliphate ruled from Khorasan, but authority lay in the hands of increasingly independent governors. In the 9th century, the Iranian Samanid aristocracy rose to prominence. Ismail ibn Ahmad, ruler of Bukhara from 875, purged Tahirid and Safarid influence to unite Central Asia under the Samand dynasty. There followed a century of remarkable political, cultural, and economic growth. Sunni Islam was firmly established as Bukhara attracted the greatest scholars and poets of the age. The 8th and 9th centuries were a golden age for Uzbekistan. Bukhara grew to become one of the wealthiest and most important centers in the Islamic world, a fitting rival to Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo. The city's elite patronized some of the greatest artists and intellectuals of the day. Islam gained a foothold in the region, marking a turning point in the cultural and religious landscape of the land. One of the earliest and most notable centers of Islamic learning was the city of Bukhara, where Imam Bukhari was born. Imam Bukhari is a key figure in Sunni Islam and the best known for compiling the Sahih al-Bukhari, one of the most comprehensive collections of hadith and authoritative books after the Quran. Bukhara is also the birthplace of Ibn Sina, who became a physician at the age of 13 and memorized the Quran by the age of 10. Ibn Sina devoted his entire life in the pursuit of knowledge. His work included science, poetry, religion, and many more. On the other hand, Ulugh Beg was the famous astronomer of his time, who went to become a great ruler of Central Asia. His engraving can be found where he sits around the table along with Ptolemy, Tycho Brahe, Hevelius, and other astronomers well known to the West. Beg contributed significantly in the field of science and built a madrasa, university, where other scientists and students gathered to study. The institute still stands beautifully within Registan Square in the city of Samarkand, whose distinctive awing Islamic architecture cannot be missed. All of them enjoyed access to Bukhara's treasury of wisdom, a library surpassed in the Islamic world only by the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. The city was largely destroyed by the Mongols in 1220. Genghis Khan addressed the trembling citizens of Bukhara with a perverse sense of logic. If you had not committed great sins, he said, God would not have sent a punishment like me. When the Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta arrived in Bukhara a century later in 1333, the city was still in ruins, more so than any other location in Central Asia. Samarkand's name drips with an exotic romanticism, whose resonance can be largely attributed to the immortal lines of James Elroy Flecker's 1913 verse play, Hassan. We travel not for trafficking alone. By hotter winds our fiery hearts are fanned. For lust of knowing what should not be known, we make the golden journey to Samarkand. Set at a trade crossroads and fed by the Zirafshan River, Samarkand has been a trading center since the earliest times when it was known as Afrosiab. Alexander the Great visited in 329 BC, when it was the Sogdian city of Marakanda, part of the Achaemenid, ancient Persian Empire. Everything I have heard about Marakanda is true, said Alexander, except it is even more beautiful than I imagined. Samarkand's Registan is without doubt the single most dramatic architectural ensemble in Central Asia. 3 towering madrasas, saturated from head to toe in mesmerizing tilework, rise around open ground to form an irresistible symmetry. When he looked upon the scene in 1888, the British traveler, MP, and future Viceroy of India, George Curzon, called it the noblest public square in the world. In the late 14th century, the tribal prince Timur Tamerlane created a vast empire with Samarkand as its capital. But the political stability he established crumbled after his death. Shaibani Khan in the early 1500s led a major invasion by Uzbek tribes from the north. From this time on, Uzbeks dominated the political life of central Turkestan. 3 independent Khanates, centered in Bukhara, Khiva, and Kokand, dominated Turkestan between the 16th and the 19th century. The city, Khiva, hidden in the deserts of northwest Uzbekistan, the oasis caravan town of Khiva, has always been the remotest of the 3 Khanates. The local legend has the town founded by Shem, son of Noah, like its great brethren rivers, the Indus, Nile, and Euphrates. The nearby Oxus Delta has long nourished some of Asia's great centers of antiquity. Most of these abandoned cities now lie neglected, lost, and baking in the desert sands. Though the formal capital of Gurjanj can still be visited in neighboring Turkmenistan. Dating back more than 2,500 years, the ancient city is one of the oldest in Central Asia. The father of algebra and the decimal point, Abdullah Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khawarizmi, a Persian polymath, was born in the city of Khawarizm, now Khiva, around the late 8th century or early 9th century. His book, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabbala, the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing, laid out systematic methods for solving linear and quadratic equations. The word algebra itself is derived from the Arabic title of his book, Al-Jabr. Khiva prospered after both the Mongols in Timur flattened Gurganj, and it eventually became the region's capital in 1592. The oasis town provided a vital pit stop for caravans heading to Merv, also in Turkmenistan. Trade with the Russian Volga, particularly in Astrakhan, added to the city's wealth and filled its caravanserais with samovars, furs, guns, rare minerals, charcoal pelts, and Turkestani melons. At the turn of the 15th to 16th centuries, Vasco da Gama's ships blazed the sea route from Europe to India and further on to China. Uzbekistan lost its strategic economic importance on which it had rested for 2 millennia. The region happened to turn a political and economic periphery zone. The technological potential of Central Asia found itself locked from the outside world development for almost 3 centuries. Colonial annexation of Central Asia by the Tsarist Russia in 1860 bound Uzbekistan with Russia for 130 years. Foreign economic and international contacts of the region were monopolized first by St. Petersburg and then by the Soviet Moscow. In the Soviet era, the Grand Mufti, who headed the board, met with hundreds of foreign delegations each year in his official capacity. And the board published a journal on Islamic issues, Muslims of the Soviet East. However, the Muslims working on participating in any of these organizations were carefully screened for political reliability. Furthermore, as the government ostensibly was promoting Islam with the one hand, it was working hard to eradicate it with the other. The government sponsored official anti-religious campaigns and severe crackdowns on any hint of an Islamic movement or network outside of the control of the state. Many mosques were closed. After Uzbekistan gained independence from Russia in 1991, they were left with a lot of work to recreate a nation. Returning to the roots of the nation with Islam quickly became the answer for Uzbekistan. The elites decided to use Turkey as a model for the establishment of their new government. Instead of Islam fully taking over the government, Sharia norms would be used to influence social order in the new Uzbekistan. Discussion ensued from Islamic religious leaders if it's acceptable to pick and choose likable parts of Islam instead of fully embracing it. President Karimov and his advisors knew they needed loyalty from the citizens during a period of a weak and fragile government. They had 2 options: fully embrace the idea of nationalism or use Islam as a glue to hold together a revived society. The elites choose to combine the 2 options and created the slogan, "Our Islam." The Soviet Union fed lots of anti-Islam propaganda to Uzbekistan and the other Central Asian nations over the decades. To the surprise of Uzbekistan elites, Islam was still a strong root in the lives of families across the nation. Islam was not a core part of their lives anymore, but the identity of being Muslim still existed. This is what the government wanted because they did not want an Islamic identity. They wanted an Uzbek identity. It seems as though the Uzbek government succeeded in rebuilding this broken nation and were able to create a new sense of identity. Jonathan Fox's data shows that Uzbekistan has a state-controlled religion and a negative attitude in terms of the relationship. This is as expected since Uzbekistan is a secular state. The government does fund religion, and specifically Islam, since over 94% of Uzbeks are Sunni Muslim. The financial support received is one of the highest in the world for a state government lending aid to a religion. Tashkent, the capital of Uzbekistan and the largest city in Central Asia. Tashkent is the business and culture center of the country. It's a city of wide avenues and green alleys, with architecture from different periods, including Soviet architecture, modern architecture, and the centuries-old minarets and mosques. Hospitality is genuine in Uzbekistan, and many follow the saying, "The visitor is dearer than your father." Uzbeks everywhere wear the doppy skull cap with pride, and the fabulously photogenic elders, known respectfully as aksakal or whitebeards, still wear the striped cloaks known as khalat or chapan. The women of the region are a riot of color. The older ones often dressed in shimmering ikat cloth and sporting mouthfuls of gold teeth.